Welcome to part 2 of the Genetic Archive raid video tutorials. My name is Prophet from DVS Gaming, and in this video we will be covering Kuralak the Defiler. Kuralak has two main phases, a hide-and-seek phase and an egg phase. Hide-and-seek will last for the first 30% of the boss's health, during which every 50 seconds the boss will blind the raid and teleport behind one of 6 pillars located around the room. When she's hiding, she cannot be seen from a distance. Much like stealth, you need to be within close proximity to her in order for her to appear. Once the fight starts, she will teleport behind a pillar almost immediately, so have each person at their pillar they are responsible for at the pole. Once found, she needs to be interrupted. Interrupting will teleport her back to the center of the room. Start your 50-second timers at this point to have an accurate countdown for the next time she disappears. The 6 raid members on the outside of the room checking pillars will have to navigate their way back to the center of the room to engage the boss. Lasers can be jumped over by double jumping and using a movement ability. A few seconds before she teleports, have members of the raid who are checking pillars move into position. Some classes are able to move to the pillars earlier than others, since they can either mitigate or heal through the ground AoE that covers the outside of the room in between teleports. At 70%, the boss will transition into the egg phase. She will start by casting chromosome corruption on a random member of the raid. That member will be cocooned in an egg that pulses damage, and must be interrupted by another member of the raid in order to stop the AoE damage and break out the random member. The random member and the one who broke the egg will now have a corruption buff that increases assault power and support power for the rest of the encounter, but additionally causes them to take consistent dot damage and be egged every time she casts an ability called Cultivate Corruption. The buff grows exponentially, every time doubling the amount of eggs and people needed to break them out. You will start with 1 egg, then 2, moving up to 4, finally 8, 16 being impossible. No one during this encounter can interrupt more than 1 egg. Having the corruption buff already and interrupting another egg will cause that person to die immediately and kill the majority of the raid. After the first outbreak, which requires you to line of sight the boss around a pillar, there will be a tank swap. The swap is achieved like everything else in the fight, an interrupt. The boss will cast a channeled ability called DNA Siphon. Interrupting that will drop the current tank with threat down to the bottom of the threat list and significantly reduce everyone else's threat. Meanwhile, the person who interrupted gets propelled to the top. You can see the significance of this change in the threat meter in the bottom right. Following the second outbreak, she will cast Cultivate Corruption, turning the 2 members of the raid with the corruption buff into eggs. Having preset destinations on where to stand in the room is necessary to avoid having stacked eggs. Once both of those eggs are interrupted, 4 members of the raid will now be carrying the corruption buff. Shortly after the 3rd outbreak, there will be another tank swap, followed by another Cultivate Corruption, prompting 4 eggs. No tank swap or eggs after the 4th outbreak, but take this time to make any changes to interrupt locations in your raid in preparation for the 8 eggs. After the 5th outbreak, move everybody into position immediately for 8 eggs. Aim interrupts away from the boss, and eliminate the eggs as fast as possible. Very shortly after the eggs are placed, she casts DNA Siphon, prompting a tank swap. If a DPS or a healer accidentally clips the boss with an interrupt as she casts DNA Siphon, they will be put to the top of the threat list. Gaining threat back as a tank is next to impossible on this fight, since DPS have a massive damage increase. If anybody with a corruption buff dies, it eggs another party member immediately. This can cause major problems late in the raid when available people to interrupt are scarce. Any deaths make this fight near impossible. Staying alive, interrupting, and placing eggs correctly is what this fight comes down to. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for notifications on future videos.